Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the entire Chamber team, I hope that this event finds you feeling safe and healthy. And maybe as the conversations have shifted to reopening the economy and entering something called a normal, there's a little bit of optimism that people are feeling at this point too. During this really unprecedented time at the Chamber, we remain committed to serving as a voice of the greater Boston business community and addressing the challenges together that we face in reopening our city, our region, and our state. We're pleased that plans for reopening the economy are beginning to take shape. And business leaders I know across the region are looking forward to how exactly we will phase back into the workplace in some cases, although one of our panelists workers have been at work throughout the crisis and will be anxious to hear how they did. But this is an issue on people's minds, this notion of return to work and what will it look like. In addition to advocating at the Chamber, we seek to inform, provide information, share what's going on among our members, and also to try to provide some sense of community and connectedness in this physically distant, social distance world that we're living in right now. Really, that's what today is all about. We've got a couple of hundred people that will join this discussion today, so that's great to see. Today's discussions will feature examples of how companies plan to maintain, to reskill, to rebuild their workforces, how HR policies are evolving to match the new work environment, and how organizations are maintaining and prioritizing diversity goals in this moment. And I'm sure there'll be some discussions about what we're learning in an environment where for the most part, our economy has been shut down. Before I get started, I really want to give a big thank you to the co-chairs of the Chamber's Talent Development and Retention Council for their work in keeping these conversations going, not just during this pandemic crisis, but year-round. Joanne Pekarski, Senior Director of Workforce Development and Community at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and Kerry Stakem, who does join us today, Northeast People Leader at PwC, who will be moderating the discussion. I want to flag that today's webinar is being recorded and streamed to Facebook Live. It will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. There will be discussions, but also a Q&A period. So please submit your questions through the webinar using the chat feature on your screen. If you are dialed in or just would like to, you can email questions in to chamber programs with an S, one word, at bostonchamber.com. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers and panelists. As I said, our moderator and co-chair of this council is Kerry Stakem, who has spent 23 years at PwC in various roles. In Kerry's current role as Northeast People Leader, Kerry drives the people strategy to cultivate connectivity and development opportunities for professionals with a focus on diversity and inclusion. Our first panelist is Reka Cherivolu, Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Nixon Peabody. Reka is an experienced litigator who now oversees the firm's diversity initiatives. In addition to her work at Nixon Peabody, Reka is active with many associations and boards advocating for greater diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. Joining Reka is Mary Kelly, Vice President of Human Resources and Corporate Outreach at ABC Corp. As part of the company's executive leadership team, Mary leads all HR efforts across North America. Mary is focused on increasing AB Corp's connectivity within the local business community and also serves on our Chamber Women's Network Advisory Board. And next we have Maria Silvestri, Senior Vice President of Human Resources for Stop and Shop. Maria oversees human resources for Stop and Shop's more than 60,000 employees across 5 states. Throughout her career, Maria has shepherded organizations through numerous reorganizations and transformations. And finally, we have Addie Schwartz, CEO of Retire. As the leader of the company, Addie works with Fortune 500 companies to create opportunities for women at all ages and stages of their career. Addie's own life experience served as a launching pad for an organization that helped those returning to the workforce after a break in their career. So I'm grateful to all of you for joining us today. Anxious to hear from all of your different perspectives, especially Maria, and how Stop and Shop kept it going throughout this crisis, but also how you're thinking about returning to work and what lessons have been learned as you think about the people in your companies going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kerry.
Thank you, Jim. And before we dive in, I just want to say a big thank you to the Chamber for holding so many virtual opportunities to connect over the past few months during the pandemic. I know I've joined quite a few on transportation and other topics. So just thank you for your leadership, Jim, and your team. And I also want to have a big thank you to all the frontline heroes who are putting their lives on the line daily to help us, whether it's grocery store workers, mail carriers, nurses, pharmacists, doctors. I could go on and on, but just a big heartfelt thank you to all of them. So as we dive in, I know we're all awaiting more from Governor Baker with insight on what reopening Massachusetts will look like. I know he's outlined the 4 phases: start, cautious, vigilant, and new normal. And today I think it would be helpful if we just dive in and talk about what that might look like or mean for different employers. I know when we shut the lights off, when we closed down a lot of companies, not all companies, that might have been easy as compared to how we think about reopening and reemerging Massachusetts. So I know there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, so would love to hear from everyone on the panel. What are some of the things you're thinking about? What are those guidelines or guiding principles that you're considering as you bring employees back on site in some cases, or you have employees who have been on site and bring more employees back? So with that, I'd like to turn over and maybe start with you, Rekha, and then hear from the rest of the panelists.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, first and foremost, I think every organization is going to think about the health and safety of their employees. So how can people get back to their physical spaces in a safe way? I don't think there's a magic date the same way we closed. I think it's going to be much more of a gradual process. And as we think about which employees start coming back to the physical space, I think it's really important to think about other factors related to that, demographics, because certain people are more vulnerable to this pandemic and this virus. So keeping that in mind, allowing people to who have childcare issues, because right now childcare options are very limited. So as we think about who we're going to ask if they'd like to come back to the physical space, we need to start thinking about the various different types of people that work within an organization.
Thank you, Rekha. Mary, you want to go next?
Thanks. So as an essential business, AB Corp has remained open throughout this entire duration, providing some critical products to the financial and the government sector. So we very quickly needed to implement some safety guidelines to protect our employees. Some of the things that we've done, well, first of all, so we have manufacturing employees. We made the decision at the beginning of this to send majority of our non-production employees to work remotely, and then focused on keeping the production staff safe. So some of the things that we've done are, obviously the mandatory face coverings and social distancing, reminding employees to practice good hygiene, work travel being banned completely, and then just, explicitly communicating to employees to stay home if they're sick, to go home if they're sick, to be in constant communication with the HR team. And, we've set up sanitizer stations throughout the facility and at all the entrances, and staggered shifts, took a look at our air filtration system, reconfigured workstations and common areas. So pretty much anything and everything we've done. And, it's a learning process. So there is no sort of playbook that you can look to at the beginning of this. So you kind of learn as you go, learn how to be flexible. But I think the biggest thing has been just making sure that we have real-time, transparent communication with our employees, listening to their feedback, what's working, what isn't, what are some concerns, what are we missing, and just making sure that we're responding very quickly to those so that our employees understand and they know that even though we may not have all the answers, we certainly will do anything that we can and need to do to keep them safe.
Thank you. Yeah, I think transparent communication and, as you said, Rika, safety, and you said, Mary, are key things as we think about the reemergence. Abby, would love to hear from you. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank
Perfect.
you. So it's interesting because not only do we have our employees, but then we work with companies and put employees back in their organizations. So we've seen a lot of different things over the last 90 days. We've been basically all at home internally since March 16th. We're a nimble company. I think we have every flavor of work arrangement in our organization. We have predominantly women in the organization anyway, so I think that has driven a lot of our flexibility before the pandemic. But I think things that we're thinking about now is being very cautious. We're working effectively together at home. We're actually missing things, but we put little huddles in between meetings with external companies. But we're taking a cautious approach in terms of when we do go back. And I think we are going to, like Mary said, have staggered shifts. We're going to probably likely work from home until we have a real sense of safety. And with our companies, it's interesting because we have actually launched new return to work programs in the middle of the pandemic virtually. And so it's actually enabled us to think differently about how we onboard and train our women that are going back and men going back into the workforce. So it's been interesting.
Great, thank you. I think we'll talk a little bit more too about onboarding and hiring during this time at a later question, so maybe you can weigh in there as well. Maria, would love to hear from you. I know many of your workforce is still working, which we thank you for that, and please pass that along to your workers, but would love to hear from you what you're thinking about as the reemergence.
Thanks, Carrie. Right, obviously our store associates continue to service our communities. We also have distribution associates who are helping with the supply chain. They continue to be in their workplace. And then we have a support office. So that's really what we're thinking about right now and surveying them so that we have a good understanding of what their needs and expectations are. Obviously, we want them to feel as if they can remain healthy when returning to the workforce. So we're very much in tune with what they're asking for, what their needs are, and how we align that with the needs of the business. So ongoing, and we expect that to very much be a phased approach.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I know we've all been working from home and quite effectively, Adi. I think you mentioned, in some cases. How do you feel work from home might look like in the future? Is it sort of here to stay, do you think? And what do you think that means for the long term of the economy? Anyone can take that.
Oh, I think it's here to stay. I think this has shown a lot of organizations that it is doable, that we don't necessarily need that FaceTime component all the time. There are different ways to connect, alternative ways. Technology has enabled that. So especially until we have some sort of vaccine or treatment, I think we're going to see this work from home arrangement exist for a pretty long period of time. And people will adjust. So they'll adjust to this new normal. I think we're going to see that it enables a lot of people with differently able people to be more engaged in the workforce. There's going to be a lot more flexibility for working parents, caregivers, to be engaged in the workforce in a different way. So I think it's definitely here to stay.
I want to just pipe in there, and I just want to pipe in there and say that there was an article in the Atlantic just this week called "Work from Home is Here to Stay," Rika, just like you said, and they cited a Stanford research study that was done in 2015, well before the pandemic, showing that employees who worked from home were 13% more productive, happier, and less likely to quit their job. So I think that, you know, this new normal will, I think, absolutely factor in this idea of sort of this hybrid in-office work from home environment, and maybe offer that final flexibility that individuals need of all different groups in order to, you know, bring their best potential to work.
That's great. Yeah, I certainly haven't missed my commute. I know I've, you know, saved probably an hour and a half each way. So that has been a nice addition to my work, you know, work productivity. So thanks for sharing those stats, Addie, because that definitely is compelling to say, you know, that it is effective. And it'll be interesting to see what that means maybe for real estate, or what the workplace looks like in the future if more and more people work from home. So another question I would love to hear is any HR benefits or policies that you've been anything that you've been implementing or thinking about implementing as a result of the pandemic? I'll open it up to anyone that may want to comment.
I'll chime in. Just generally speaking, you're seeing a lot more emphasis on mental health and wellness. And I think our organization definitely has made that a priority. The legal profession in general is really focused on mental health. And right now, obviously, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of apprehension. This is a big stressor, and mental health and wellness benefits have never been more important, as well as physical health. Maintaining, you know, different types of fitness benefits, as well as just making sure that people can see doctors when they need them to address conditions as necessary.
Yeah, thanks for sharing there. I know at PwC we've sort of doubled down on well-being, holding some webinars on resiliency, you know, how to prevent burnout, how to work from home effectively while managing a lot of other competing priorities. And so I know mental health is one thing that was important before this and is even more important as we are in this pandemic. So I'd love to hear, I think Mary and Maria, we had chatted before a little bit on some of the things you might be thinking about around mental health, if you have anything else to add, or physical health.
Okay, I'll go. So yeah, there's definitely a focus on, you know, doing whatever we can to support our employees' well-being. So mental health, physical health, financial health. We've definitely taken a look at our employee assistance programs and look to enhance wherever we can to kind of beef them up, and also enhance our communication efforts to get the word out so that people know what benefits are available to them. So, you know, our healthcare provider has really stepped up in the response to COVID. So they've, you know, improved their telehealth services and prescription availability, a lot of digital and online resources to help employees with confidentiality who maybe aren't so comfortable, you know, raising their hand and acknowledging that they need help, to find the resources that they need. We are definitely looking to, you know, to enhance the mental health piece and probably extend, you know, the free counseling sessions for those that need it. Also some financial planning guidance, and, you know, how to navigate through some of the federal supplements that are available to people, and just, you know, helping to support not only our employees, but their families. A lot of their families, you know, their loved ones have actually lost their jobs, and so they're trying to navigate through unemployment and health insurance, and so just a lot of questions. HR's really been the one stepping in to help answer those questions, but we're trying to make sure we have an extension of that with programs and benefits that are going to support that type of a dynamic as we continue to kind of need this for a long time. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that too. The financial and mental may even go hand in hand too, because of all the like loss of jobs or loss of, financial independence. Some of that all, trickles down and impacts mental health. So love to hear what you're doing around that. Thank you. Maria, do you have anything you want to add or before I move on? I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. I will move on. So I would love to chat. Reka, I had a question around fostering inclusive community within work. When you have people who are working in person and people who are working remote, like how do we keep that inclusive culture? Because I think that's
I think
something
Stop and
that's
Shop,
so important.
our core value of care has.
I don't know if we have a delay. Can you hear?
Should I answer the question on the diversity or?
Yeah, I don't know. Maria, can you hear us? Or I couldn't hear you, but then it might have been delayed.
I can't.
I think we might be having some, want to go ahead? I think we're having some technical difficulties, at least on my end with
I
Maria.
think for us, our guidance, so earlier we've had. Are you able to hear me now?
A little bit. No, I can't.
So I would, echo a lot of what's been done, mentioned earlier.
I don't know. I'm having some trouble hearing you. So I'm going to go over to Reka, and then I don't know if there's a dial-in if you want to try dialing in, or I don't know if there's Ben or one of the tech people could help. Maybe we can get Maria back on live so we can hear.
Yeah, Maria, if you want to exit the meeting and rejoin with the same link, that should hopefully help with your connection.
Okay, sorry about that. While we have her rejoin, we will go to Reka to talk about inclusive communities, and then we'll go back to Maria Fowler. Okay.
So for years before all of this happened, we've been talking about how important diversity and inclusion are in organizations to the health, that more diverse organizations are more innovative and creative, and it's smart business. And now's the time to really show that, especially in a time when so much is uncertain and it's a little harder to connect with people. And that's where communication is really critical. There's an opportunity to communicate with your teams. There's an opportunity to really bring people together digitally and virtually. But we're gonna need to be more proactive. We're gonna need to be mindful about the voices that we're seeking out, to lead teams, to lead projects, to speak up in meetings. The easy thing to do right now is to gravitate towards what's familiar, the people that we are more comfortable with, which tend to be people that remind us of ourselves. So we are going to need to take this extra step to really think about before we make decisions, before we profile different people, before we judge people. Even right now, this whole situation is unprecedented. So it's really easy for our unconscious biases to get triggered. Because what happens is when we're in stressful times, our minds just tend to pull the quickest piece of data it can find about people, and typically the opinions we have about other people tend to be based on a lot of unconscious biases. So we have to ask ourselves why. Why are we choosing the people that we are choosing to lead the teams? Why are we asking certain people to speak during virtual meetings? It's very difficult sometimes, as we've seen with technology, to make sure you're having all the voices heard in a virtual call like this or in a meeting. And we also need to be mindful of the unique challenges everybody is facing right now. Something as simple as what people's homes look like may impact why they turn on their camera. And we can't make any decisions or judgments based on these unique circumstances. So it's taking an extra step And even maybe thinking about different people, making sure that you're considering a diverse slate of candidates to lead a team or to take on a high profile matter. It's extra effort, but it's well worth it because studies have shown that diverse and inclusive organizations are more creative, more innovative, and stronger. And that's what we need right now. We need our best up at the front and doing the best that they can.
Yeah, that's really important. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone last week around just being authentic in their conversations and letting their guard down, because when you share with someone else, they might open up and share with you, and they might give you a glimpse into their life, and you might build this connection and then feel more included and help draw them in when you're having meetings and make them feel included. As people think about hiring, how do we keep diversity and inclusion top of mind in our strategy?
Well, as I said, it should be a strategic priority for organizations that want to survive during this unprecedented time. So there's a benefit to making sure you are thinking about diverse slates of candidates for open opportunities. So the first thing I would do is start with your job description. What are the criteria that you are looking for in your job description? Is the job description itself limiting you? There are certain words that tend to attract women to positions versus men. So really taking a look at what you're looking for and which criteria are must-haves and which ones are nice to have. And by whittling down your job description, you're probably going to open yourself up to a wider pool of candidates, a more diverse group of candidates. Also cast a wider net. Look at the networks you typically tap for new positions, where you post these positions. And try to think of different ways. Your employee network is a great way to get referrals. If you have employee resource groups, asking them to tap into their networks, talking to a broader range of recruiters if you talk to recruiters, but making sure those recruiters understand that diversity and inclusion are priorities for your organization. One thing that some organizations are testing are blind resumes. Names can trigger unconscious biases. So what happens when you just put the initials into and on a resume and you judge people just based on what the content of their resume is? Ensuring that you have a diverse slate of candidates for any position is a great way to do it, but also ensuring you have a diverse slate of interviewers. Oftentimes, we are thinking a lot about making sure we have diversity on the candidate side, but we're not thinking about the diversity on the interviewer side. And that's another way to really, for people to notice different things about the candidates and elevate criteria that you may not have considered that you may want. And I think the key is to really avoid gravitating towards the familiar, someone who reminds you of yourself. And one of the things that is my own personal pet peeve is when you hear someone's not the right fit. Right fit means you want more of the same, which means you are going to get candidates that are just like you. So thinking outside the box on what you're really looking for.
And I always like to say, check your blind spots. We all have blind spots, and make sure you're being aware of what those blind spots are and checking them at the door.
And there's a lot of talent out there right now. There's a lot of people that are amazing, talented people that have been impacted by this pandemic. And it's a great opportunity to really cast a very wide net.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Maria, we have you back. So I want to go back to you if you are ready to go. Can we see if we can hear you? I can't hear you. Oh, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, let's try. I can hear you a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to, I think you were hitting upon the question on mental health. Would you like to continue there? I think we didn't hear much of what you were saying. So if you could repeat it, that would be great.
Sure, and I think, great. So, you know, we certainly tap into our core value of caring for our associates to help guide a lot of decisions made. So enhancing any of our benefits, getting people around the use of telehealth and how to really tap into that. You know, we've relaxed our attendance policies so that people don't have a fear of job risk when they're not feeling well or need to care for others in their home. And I think financial wellness has been very important to us as well. So we have made an extra $500,000 investment in our Helping Hands Fund, which is a fund that allows us to help our associates when they are experiencing extraordinary. So we're very proud of that, as well as I think just really to understand what their individual challenges have been and to address them the way that we can in order to help them in these challenging times.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot to navigate. And speaking of navigating, I know you guys operate Stop and Shop in 5 states. So navigating all of, there wasn't a centralized approach to how you operate during COVID-19, and each state is different. So how did you navigate, and how are you continuing to navigate sort of what the rules, regulations, guidelines are by state? Because that seems like that would be a very challenging time to manage all of that.
It was. I mean, again, the newness of it, I think things were changing very quickly, and we were certainly trying to remain compliant, not just within the state, but oftentimes towns and municipalities had their own sets of rules and regulations that we needed to adhere to. So certainly we continue to do that and work with those states and towns. I think even more importantly, we tried to be proactive and anticipate some of the things that we knew would be important to our customers and our communities. So we were among the first to dedicate an hour shopping those health issues for our over 60 shoppers, allow them to go in at a time where it was less busy and they felt safer in our workplace. So I think all along the way, we've been trying to anticipate as well as comply with our states and municipalities.
Thanks. Yeah, and I know you're quick to make one ways in the stores and make the safety for everyone. So thank you again for reacting so quickly and making that a priority for all of us. I'm going to shift it for a minute to Addie. I'd love to talk a little bit about what you think for reskilling and upskilling as we re-enter, and what's important to how we change the conversation about reskilling and upskilling for everyone.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, as Jim said, and we keep hearing it over and over again, it's an unprecedented time. So many careers have been disrupted. People who never anticipated having a career gap now have one, and career gaps are going to become the norm for everyone. So I believe that this fact alone should put less of a stigma around having any type of gap. For companies, the idea is really to get the best talent, and employers, just as Rekha was saying earlier, employers will need to look past the gaps and look for broader skill sets and really focus on hiring potential, which is what we've been spending nearly a decade doing. I've always said that, a career break shouldn't be a career breaker, and now we're all facing that. In a way, we're all returners now. And it's a great time, if you are finding yourself suddenly, having never been so before, sitting on the sidelines, to pick up some new skills. There are lots of opportunities to take courses on Coursera and LinkedIn, get a new certificate. And I think the number one thing that we can't forget, even though we're all isolated, is that there's a continued opportunity always to network, to meet somebody new, reach out on LinkedIn, find somebody that's doing something interesting that maybe is in an industry that is different from yours, but maybe your core skills you could pivot towards. So there is an opportunity, if you're sitting on the sidelines, to invest in yourself and propel yourself forward. So looking at different sectors and look at how core skills can be reimagined, and that's the real opportunity for employers, because in this crisis we have opportunity. We can reshape what our future workforces look like, and we can do so thoughtfully and with all of the good intention that we've wanted to, with inclusion and diversity goals at the forefront, and really looking at people for the skills that they can provide and the potential that they can offer.
Thanks, Addie. I know I was checking out your company a little bit last night because you have a proven track record of helping women return to work. So I would also encourage people, if they get a chance, to check, out some of the resources that you provide as well. And I liked all the pictures behind you of all those people that you've helped return to work. And I know there's a lot more there. So I know we're getting to almost 10:40 when we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So I think I'm going to just wrap up with one last question for everyone. We'd just love to hear one piece of advice from all of you as you think about, the coming weeks and months as we reemerge, whether that's to the office or, getting new skills or just socializing a little bit or getting outside a bit more. So what piece of advice would everyone have? So I'll start again with you, Reka. And just a reminder for those while we're doing our last minutes, if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A, or you can email them in at chamberprograms@bostonchamber.com. So Reka, any final thoughts before we go over to the audience?
I think it is to really look at the individuals, to understand what their circumstances are. You want to try to, get people slowly back into the office spaces, because I don't want to say returning to work, because a lot of people have still been working at home. But it's important to understand that, people have different challenges, different issues. Like immunocompromised individuals may have greater hesitation about returning to the office. Caregivers, working parents, they may not know what's going to be happening with their children at the moment. Schools, who knows when schools will reopen. So it's really important to listen to the people, to your talent, understand what their needs are, and see if there's a way to achieve the goals of your organization while also making sure they're able to do the best work that they can under the circumstances.
Excellent. Marie, would you like to go next?
Sure, I would agree with, that need for flexibility and really pulsing and surveying your employees to understand what they're looking for and what's important to them. I would also say remaining flexible and being able to course correct at any given time. It has been really important for us, and communication has been huge. So communicating those changes. I also think, we've taken the opportunity to do weekly town halls and let people know what's going on with our business. And we've also shared a lot of positive stories in those venues, heroes that we've had in our stores, our customers, our employees, wonderful things that they've been doing, and just providing a bit of a bright light in all of this. So that's been very successful for us as well.
Great. Addie, would you like to go next?
Okay. I feel like my piece of advice is that use this opportunity to think about how to enhance the work experience and meet your goals as a corporation. Don't play defense, play offense. And I feel like there's a great opportunity. Rahm Emanuel recently said, you never let a serious crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not have done before. And I think in relation to our talent needs and our workforce, there's a real opportunity to shape the future of our companies in this unprecedented time. I believe companies really need to look at fostering community, especially in this isolation. One thing that keeps me up is thinking about the CDC, who's talking about we have a mental crisis as well as the coronavirus, because people are isolated, people have lost their jobs, or feeling much more insecure. And we have, groups that particularly need more support. HR leaders and company leads need to be thinking about their employees in new and different ways and provide new ways of support. We all know we're all women on this panel, which is an amazing thing, Jim, to have a whole women panel. So great job. But, you know, we're hearing from women how stressed out they are because they're juggling 4, 5, and 6 jobs now. You know, they're not only doing their real job at work, but then they're a school teacher, daycare provider, you know, I call it chief of the supply chain with all the food and everything else that needs to go along. And the stress is just going to increase. And that happens through underrepresented groups as well. So I do feel like that people, HR leaders need to think about additional tools, and you know, Zoom and other communication tools are great, but how do you support that next level of for those people in need? And one thing that we've created that many companies are using is this new digital platform, Aurora, which is really designed to connect teams of people to each other to provide extra support related to their career. So there are lots of other things to do, but we need to make sure that we're providing that extra support. I guess the last thing is that what we've done in our company is when there have been open jobs, being open-minded internally and figuring out, are there people internally that weren't doing those jobs that with those, you know, basic skills could be repurposed to do new jobs and new skills and build their own skill set as a result of it. And that has been a huge win for our company. So I would suggest companies look inside as well as outside.
Thank you, Addie. I know my 5-year-old new coworker this morning told me that I needed to raise my hand today if I wanted to ask a question on the panel. And I said to my husband, you need to go outside for the next hour because I don't want any pop-ups. So it is a juggle managing, and supply chain is a big one too. I've never become so close with Instacart. So thank you for sharing that. Mary, any last final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said already. I think one of the pieces that's really important to me anyway is finding a way to, you know, make sure we're leading with empathy and really trying to understand where our employees are, like physically, mentally. You know, everybody's challenged with something. We're all going through this together. It really is true, but it's so different for each person. So I think, you know, really being as transparent, over communicating, again, responsiveness, and really trying to be adaptive and in our approach to, you know, what type of benefits we need to have, what policies, what communication tools. So it's just really a learning experience, but I think responsiveness, communication, and empathy are 3 major components that I think are very critical at this time.
Very well said. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to some questions that have come in, and I just encourage you, if you have any questions, to send them in. This is a question for Maria, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but the perspective is that retail grocery workers feel they bear the same risks as some of the frontline healthcare workers, but don't get as much credit. So morale, you know, can be down because, you know, there are a lot of pressures and demands on them. What are some things that we can do to keep morale for these essential retail employees up? And what are the time resources for morale in the face of all these other priorities?
I mean, from a morale perspective, I think that, you know, it's, we've been challenged in terms of bringing folks together. And so I think that we've taken a much more one-off approach just to adhere to social distancing and those types of things. I think that, again, we are recognizing, we have Heroes of the Week that we put out and post to recognize, again, all the heroic, even the smallest event that means the biggest thing to our customers has been incredibly, you know, humbling to us in our organization. And we try to dial that up as regularly as we possibly can. You know, certainly we've increased the pay of those workers and are proud that that's something we've been able to do. We are modifying schedules. Again, we are very much encouraging people to be home when they're not well or when they have to care for others, and don't want them to feel that in any way that puts their job or career at risk.
Right. I know when I go into a store, I always make it an extra point to thank everyone that I see, because I feel like, I know it's just a thank you, but it's sort of like things that you maybe didn't think to do before. And I almost get choked up when I say thank you to them. And so hopefully others do the same as well, because I feel like a thank you goes a long way.
They do. Our customers have been phenomenal.
Yeah. We've gotten a couple questions about panelists being open to sharing contact info and emails to continue the conversation. So we can take that offline and hopefully we can share some of that. Addie, you talked a lot about upskilling opportunities for knowledge workers, which sounds like white collar work. What upskilling and training opportunities do you see for hourly employees?
I think this is a good opportunity to think about another industry. And, you know, there are other industries that can leverage your skills. I know a huge opportunity right now for hourly workers is in the delivery, shipping and delivery area. I don't know, it's not necessarily safe, as safe, but there are growing jobs, you know, with everything getting delivered from Amazon to FedEx to UPS to the post office. And I also think, you know, if you have an outdoors job, you are in a really good place. So landscapers and people that are spending time outside have a great opportunity to do that. But you know, you could learn it, you could take a certificate, but there are lots of things to learn across a variety of areas. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this?
One thing I would add, I know there's a lot of free resources out there. PwC actually just released their digital fitness app for free. So you can get upskilled in a variety of areas for digital. And all you have to do is download it on your either Android or Apple device. And the free invite code is LearnAll, LRNALL, all caps. So I encourage anyone that maybe is looking to digitally upskill to take a look at that. And there could be some good resources there. I know there's probably a lot of other free resources out there that people could tap into as well. Anyone else have any thoughts before I move on to the next question? Okay, this is a question, I guess, for all, but what's the single most important thing you can do in your company to improve diversity and inclusion?
I think I'll take a stab at that one.
Sure.
Well, the first thing is, if you're a leader within your organization, messaging is really important to emphasize that it remains a priority for your organization. And then practicing what you preach by ensuring that all of your talent, in particular your diverse talent, is fully utilized right now, that they are being thought of for opportunities. And when you look at teams that you're putting together, when you look at who's working on different projects, to make sure that you are absolutely considering everybody that is at your disposal and within your organization who could do the work. As I mentioned earlier, it's very easy just to gravitate to the people that you are used to working with, or the people who are more vocal right now. You know, a lot more people are, you know, online more often, they're emailing constantly. If you have an intranet, like an internal instant messenger, sometimes they're just constantly sending messages, which is fantastic. But it tends to also sideline folks that may not be as visible. So it's really being proactive to ensure that all of your diverse talent feels seen, feels heard, and is being included on teams and given high-profile opportunities. I think that's the key right now to show that you are committed to diversity.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we have time for like 2 or 3 more questions, and I'm going to pass it back over to Jim. Businesses like Stop and Shop, so I think this is a question for you, Maria, have hired thousands of additional hourly employees to support an increase in demand. How do you think about sizing and structuring your workforce moving forward as the demand for your services continues to be uncertain?
You know, in terms of the structure, I think our structure is very stable in terms of, you know, our stores, most specifically in our distribution centers. I think we'll just continue to, you know, we're very fortunate that we are able to employ those that don't have a job right now, and have welcomed a number of our community members who were customers and are now employees. So we'd like to continue that and help them to see that this is a great career for them in the future, whether they want to come to us on a full-time basis or perhaps go back to their other jobs, but maintain a part-time opportunity with us as well.
Thanks. Okay, this is a question for anyone. How do we empathetically ensure that employees take personal responsibility and show respect to policies? Employers have made positive changes, but it's not a success without employee buy-in.
I'll say,
One thought that I have is it's important to listen to the employees. There may be a reason that there's not a lot of buy-in. Sometimes we have blind spots to things that we think are great ideas and we don't see the actual practical implications of it. So it's making sure there's a platform for the employees to give feedback before you roll out policies, to maybe pilot it with a smaller group, but it's making sure that if they're not buying into it, there might be a reason to trying to understand that reason. And also communicating the organization's reasons for implementing this. Instead of just rolling out the policy, maybe give some of the logic and the research and the data behind doing it.
Mary, did you want to add something, or were you going to?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I was going to say as well. And it's just, you know, making sure that we're articulating to the employees the purpose and the reason behind what we're doing. And again, being open to the response and the communication from the employees. So, you know, if we can tweak things or if we can respond in some way that shows that we're listening, I think that is a huge sentiment that, you know, employees are recognizing, especially right now. They're paying attention to see if, you know, we're listening, not just throwing things at them and telling them to, you know, do this, do that, do that. I think, you know, for us personally, we've taken the time to explain to employees why we're doing things, and they see that these measures that we're putting into place are really are there because we want to protect them. And so because of that, they've embraced them, and they remind each other, you know, when it's appropriate that, you know, this is the way it's supposed to be, or, and I think they appreciate our attempt to make it easier for them. So, you know, as far as, you know, face masks, you know, we're providing them in sanitizer, we're making all those things available to them so that it's not a hardship on them. So it's not like you have to wear a mask, but what if I don't have a mask, or I can't find sanitizer? So we've kind of taken that, that on us to kind of help them follow the rules.
That's important. Thank you. So I know we are at 5 minutes till, and Jim, I'm going to pass it back over to you. But before I do, I just wanted to thank the panelists for sharing your insights and being such a great panel. And I really enjoyed spending this last hour with you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Jim.
Great, and thank you, Carrie, for doing such a great job as moderator and contributor today. You know, as I was listening, you all underscored much of what I hear from the CEOs and companies all over Greater Boston. In each and every conversation I have with them about the current environment and the phases of returning to work and even a long term, the very first thing in their minds is the safety and health of the employees. How can we make sure that that we provide an environment in which they feel that? So thank you for underscoring that during the conversations. I also want to pick up on the question and the answers around the morale of frontline employees, people that are in public-facing jobs, whether it's in supermarkets or soon we'll be returning to the T. You know, I loved Maria's answer and Kerry's statement about saying thank you. I think some of that morale is not necessarily what the company does, but what the public does, you know, as they're interfacing with people at the checkout counter or the driver of the bus. So I guess the message to all of us is bring your patience, practice grace, and, you know, maybe say thank you once in a while, and understand that that, you know, those people are in a tough situation too. And that will help with the morale of those frontline workers. So thanks to all of you for participating in this panel. Before I close, I do want to highlight 2 upcoming events on the Chamber's calendar. Next week, in fact, we will continue our series on the future of Boston, focusing on a subject that is very topical this week, which is the future of higher education. We've seen some announcements from Northeastern University and Harvard and other of our colleges and universities this week about their plans for September. So we will have the presidents of some of our most prominent universities, Northeastern, Boston University, UMass, Emerson, and others, at an event next week that will take place on Wednesday, May 20th at 1 p.m. So I hope you'll join us for that. And looking forward to the hole that this pandemic and economic crisis has created for the state budget, on May 21st at 2 p.m. We'll be joined by the Speaker of the House, Robert DeLeo, to talk about the challenges that state government will have. We've seen projections of as much as a $4 to $7 billion budget deficit. What will that mean as we think about returning to something that is normal and moving into 2021? So tune into those. You can register for those programs and learn more information about Chamber events at bostonchamber.com. And we're going to close this event with a great big thank you to our panelists and wishes for a safe and healthy day for all of the participants. That concludes our session today. Thank you.